All right, we are live. My name is Dr. Sharnael, Wolverton-Sehon. I'm going to give this like a minute to get on here. And I've been having some issues with Facebook, the internet. I don't know. Have you had any stuff going on, Sean?
No, I mean, I'm on Facebook. So no, I haven't had any issues.
Oh, that's right. You're not on Facebook. You're just Instagram guy. So yeah, for some reason, let me see. I want to make sure why you guys are waiting for this to come up 100%. I'd love to hear where you're from, what you're doing, like what city, state, what have you. I'm just going to make sure and set this up to not just me being able to see it, but everyone to be able to view it.
Sure.
Public. That's important.
Yeah.
All right. So we are here with director Sean Stone. I say director, but he's kind of a man of a lot of different hats. He's an author. He is an actor. He's a activist. He's a consciousness lover and a truth lover. And I actually met him I guess, through a panel that we did with Carrie Cassidy a few weeks ago. And then I had him back, and we had some technical stuff that this last time. So we're bringing him back. And I just wanted you guys to get to know him a little bit. And for those who aren't familiar with you and your work, I'm just going to start off by allowing you to just to share a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, kind of your background and how you got here. Because I know you're quite involved in the timeline of kind of what a lot of people are focusing on right now with all the political stuff and what have you. But give us a little bit of background of you as a person, and then how you got here.
Oh man, where is it? That's so complicated. That's too long.
Is it?
Where is here? Where is here? That's the question. Where are we? Are we on the cusp of the real 2012? Are we on the cusp of the new Earth? I feel that we are. I feel that we're at we're living through the beginning of the bifurcation of humanity. Those that will basically allow themselves to be enslaved with the technocratic transhuman agenda. Those that are willingly surrendering their sovereignty and their power for fear of the virus, and willing to basically surrender to some other authority that's going to tell them what's best for them, for their body, and for their being. So for those that are going to surrender to that, that's sort of the transhuman agenda. The transhuman agenda is, as I think Klaus Schwab put it the best. Klaus Schwab is the creator of the World Economic Forum at Davos. Many of you may have heard of that over the years. It's like where the elite go to. Bilderberg is one such place, but Davos, Switzerland is another one where they talk about the economic, policies of the planet and the G7 meetings and all that kind of thing. So the idea of the global summits where the world powers meet, and again the financial elite come together and groom maybe sometimes their their acolytes as well. So Klaus Schwab, the founder of that, said that this transhuman agenda is about merging your biological, digital, and physical identity. And that's really where they wanted to. That's really the beginning of it, not the end of it. The beginning of it is turning you, basically chipping you and merging you with machine and putting your mind into a computer and being as nothing more than a robot, and the brain is nothing more than a computer.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually talked to people just even recently, and they're like all about the idea. They're thinking that this is the best thing since whatever, because they're like, oh, if I have a chip, then I don't need a computer and I don't need this. And they're actually looking forward to this opportunity without seeing any of the downfall. What do you see? And I mean, I could tell you what I think, but I'd love to hear what your ideas are on that.
Consciousness can't be quantified. Understand this. Soul is not quantity. Soul is not embedded in chips. Mind is not embedded in chips. These are things that are intangible, like the spirit of life itself. Those that have fallen for the materialist trap think that everything can be reduced to qubits, let's say, right? to binary coding and algorithms and things like this. That's the materialist trap. It's a reduction of everything to just some kind of quantifiable material form, analyzable by the rational, logical mind. Where I come from is the understanding of the mystical. Very much, as you would say, like within our being, we have within our being itself, we find the magic of life. We don't know how life exists. The materialists want to explain it and reduce it and say, well, it begins with some amino acids and lightning and the Frankenstein notion of life. But those of us that are actually how do you say, that are walking the spiritual path understand that life is not something that can be quantified or analyzed by the human mind. It's like the creation cannot understand how it's created. It can never fully fathom because it's a different domain, a different dimensionality of consciousness. And so where we are, from my perspective, what humans have to choose now is between understanding the magic and mystical abilities that are available to us as these powerful beings called humans, and those that basically want to reduce themselves to the physical form, material form. And essentially you could see, like in the Star Wars movie, those that are the materialists ultimately end up within the transhuman empire. They end up as stormtroopers without access to oxygen. They end up as Darth Vader, basically merging themselves more and more with machinery. And then the Jedi, that's the true power, the Jedi that can basically, they don't even die. They realize that they take on a new form, right? They transfer consciousness into a new being, a new body, which is not on this plane necessarily. But that's the mystical school. That's the understanding that we are not of this plane of existence and we don't end on this plane of existence. And that's really what's in contention. And it's always been in contention throughout human history. Those that will deceive, the sophists that will basically spin you into these false notions of what is true, what is false, what is real, what is not, because they are the sophists. They're as old as time. They're the ones that were playing at sorcery and using illusions and tricks to do so, whereas the true power, the true creation is still available to you within your being, within your consciousness, when you actually start to connect to what you are and where you come from, but it's not from this earth.
So how do you do that for someone who isn't even aware of that? Like, what would you say to someone who's like, oh, okay, I want to connect. I want to know who I am. Like, what are some simple steps, or what would you advise?
First of all, the question itself is already the answer. You see, what you seek is seeking you. The fact that people are willing to take that step. That's why I don't even converse with people that don't want to learn. They don't want to know. There's no point. If someone is just so convinced of something, they didn't want to listen. They didn't want to hear the argument. They didn't want to explore. It's like, there's no point. But if you ask the question, you say to me, well, how do I do this? Or where do I go? Or how do I open up to this? The curiosity is there, right? The mind of the child is in the curiosity that lives within you. Then you already are on that path. You will already discover it just by asking that question. Now, because the universe unfolds in such a way that no one has to guide you, you will be guided. And so for me, I would suggest them to say, do breath work, for example. Practice the breath work journeying. Get in touch with Kundalini yoga, your Kundalini energy, which is the power of your spine, right? The energy that flows up and down your spinal column. That's a journey. That's a lifelong journey. That takes time to activate. But even the breath work is a basic initiation to connect to the unconscious mind. You could do Ayahuasca Journey to connect if you're willing, if you're called to do it, to open up certain ways of seeing the world in a different way. Even mushrooms are a powerful tool for that, but they're not the only path. You don't need plant medicine to get there, but they can be sort of little wake up calls. Beyond that, I would say follow your intuition. Trust start to understand that the world as we know it now is all black, is all inversions. Everything that the media puts out at this point is inversions. At this point, I can tell you that basically if they say left, go right. If they say up, go down. because it literally is a satanic inversion. Everything that's being played out on the media landscape of sorcery and illusion is pure inversions at the most primal essence of Satanism, which is just invert God's universe. They're doing it. Everything that they say is backwards. Everything that they're saying is 180 degrees opposite.
So, and for those of you guys who don't know, he's written a book on the NWO. We actually I did an interview with Roger Richards last night, and we talked about you. Even in that interview, you were the narrator of his film, 1,000 Pieces. And, so what, since you brought it up of where we are and them and this situation, like, where do you see this all going? Like, the corruption is being exposed, and you are a big time key of a lot of, I watch your videos and your Instagram and just your voice of, being a truther and speaking out, especially with your background, to be able to go, I was in the pits of this. I've seen it from the ground up. But where do you see this going? Like, what?
I mentioned earlier the bifurcation. It's very much about human consciousness, right? Human consciousness activating, starting to see things, because as we shift our consciousness, our reality changes. You can no longer, you can only be fooled so long as you refuse to acknowledge that you're being fooled. At the moment that you realize, wait a minute, I see the trick, I know what you're doing, you're not being fooled anymore. Now you're a participant. But by being participant, you might want to change the outcome, right? You may not want to be tricked any longer. You might say, you know what? I don't want to play that game anymore. I don't like it. It's making me uncomfortable. Consciousness is the key. This is why, as I say, the media has been practicing this, not just the media, but the media, since the American media has been around really since the Second World War, very much an outgrowth of intelligence services, OSS, and thereafter CIA, manipulation of media, of consciousness, because this is an ancient game. This is ancient mind control, going back to the very word itself, media from the Medes. It's magic.
Oh, wow.
So if you look really at like the ancient forms of magic and illusion and spell casting, right? Who controls the narrative? Who controlled the narrative thousands of years ago? The court, the sorcerers around the pharaoh, and the court historians, that scribes that are the educated class, the mandarins in China, right? The ones who can actually write.
Mm-hmm.
People couldn't write. Most people didn't have reading, weren't able to read. When America was formed, actually, we were probably the first republic of literate people. The literacy in America was pretty powerful, right? England, to a certain extent, I think, was England, Holland. I mean, countries like this developed the ability to read, and so it was spread to the people for the first time. It was empowering the people, right, to read. That was the whole point of the Lutherans and the Protestants, saying the Catholic Church can no longer hold the secrets of Christianity. Now we make the Bible available to people to read for ourselves, right? The priest is no longer the intermediary. So from that evolution of consciousness, now we're at this place where the media battle is so important. So the mainstream media's hold over us. The people don't have time to sit and read. They don't have time to do what I did, which was like to research and spend years reading, years reading. So I could write, a New World Order book based in their own teachings, their own doctrines that people never hear about. The New World Order actually was their agenda. It was their language. It wasn't mine. But I had time to sit and read. Most people don't have that. So they go to what? They go to the news. And the news is then there to spin a story. And as I said, 180 degrees off. Literally, they're 180 degrees off at this point from reality. At different times, they may have been a little bit closer. Now they're 180 degrees off. So it's about consciousness. Where do you put your consciousness? If you're watching mainstream media, you're lost. You shut off mainstream media and you start to watch alternative channels and voices like mine and yours and many others that are out there, thousands and thousands of others that are out there. Now you're starting to ask that question we talked about earlier, the curiosity, which is the root of all understanding and all learning. If you're not curious, you cannot learn. If you sit there and simply absorb and say, okay, media told me, Dr. Fauci told me, Bill Gates told me, you're done. You have no consciousness. You're simply a slave. You're a robot, because you're simply imbibing what they have fed you. You're not actually questioning. You're not actually curious. And if you're not actually asking questions or delving or looking a little bit deeper, your consciousness cannot expand. consciousness not expanding, you're not growing into this opportunity, which is the new earth, which is available for those that are starting to awaken, shifting their consciousness, their perspective, their relationship with power itself, which is the root of our incarnation process or path or purpose, you could say, to empower the human individual, the I am spirit that we are, that is disempowered since childhood, because we come into the earth in a small form, in a baby form that cannot protect and vie for itself and protect itself. So it is disempowered. And from that moment forward, we are in a spin of being disempowered until that moment that we awaken, connect to our intuition and our soul and say, wait, I am. That is the power of spirit, of creation working through me that has brought me to this moment. And I am going to now work to empower myself through this lifetime to no longer allow authority figures to tell me what to do. That's why I say 180 degrees off. The Q movement is all about what? Dropping things to ask questions to empower the viewer. What does the media tell you? Q is a cult. Actually, the media is the cult, because people watching the media are listening and disempowering themselves. They're not asking the questions. They're not engaging their own soul, their own energy in the engagement process, which is how we actually grow. So by watching the media, we become passive, right? Subordinate. We are, there's only two processes in life: disempowerment or empowerment. It's like growth or decay. That's in the physical world. In the spiritual world, it all ultimately works towards your evolution. Because even if you miss it in this life, there will be more opportunities. There is no end in creation. It's a never-ending story. At the moment you think it's all over, all of a sudden that despair leads to a new spark, to a new revelation, to a new outgrowth, which is the human spirit, which is why totalitarianism has never worked.
Yeah.
No matter what the New World Order agenda may be, mask you, social distance you, put you into virtual realities and vaccinate you, it will not work, because the human spirit, which is the magic, which is the purity of creation and that desire for growth and expansion and love, that cannot be blotted out. So their best bet now is to bifurcate us into those two camps. One that will be the bots, that will be controllable, chipped, manageable, right? Controlled population, and those of us that will be more in our expansive consciousness, working on new forms of empowerment and creation and economies, figuring out how to make this great endeavor of planet Earth with billions of inhabitants and billions more of life, from the virus to the lion and the elephant and the greatest of plains animals. All of these different forms of life. How do we make it all work here? That's our conscious effort. But for too long, oligarchs, priest class, Median magicians, so self-proclaimed emperors, George Soros believing himself to be God, as he said many years ago. These people have tried to disempower you because they said humans are not meant to be empowered. Humans are meant to be controlled. Well, we're at the birth of the empowerment of the individual.
Being the Jedi.
Yes.
Yeah, I love the Star Wars thing. I'm all about Star Wars, especially the one, I mean, they're all great, but the one where Rey showcased her creativity. I guess you've watched all of them, I'm assuming, since you brought up Star Wars, but there's that one part where she's sitting in the chair and the stormtrooper comes in and she's like trying to, practice her Jedi, moves and magic. And she's like, you will put down the whatever gun or whatever, and you're going to walk out of here and open the door or whatever. And he was like, what? But then she kind of like lands. You could see where she kind of like, no, let me try this again, and then she does it. And the guy repeats like, okay, I'm dropping this and I'm going to open the door and go, and she's shocked. She's surprised. She's like, look what I did, and I think that's where a lot of us are kind of waking up to, is remembering that power within and engaging with the technology of the DNA that is actually, we've been with us the whole time, to resurrect and to heal and to transport and to remote view and remote, just to create, to come up with great technologies to advance and health and economies and all of the things that are actually already here. It's just a matter of using it, of actually creating it. And in the mainstream media, like you said, they're using our creative power against us by putting all of this out there, isolation, and then misinformation, and then force feeding. Well, not really, because people are actually participating. I mean, no one's making you turn the TV on or social media on, but those who are just there, going with the emotions and doing what they've always done, and they're not even realizing, necessarily that what's coming in isn't the truth, and or that the government isn't. I literally still have people who are like, well, the government wouldn't do that, and doctors wouldn't, blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, but when we get into that set of, like you said, not asking questions, just believing everything that everyone tells us, whatever, and then they turn up the fear, and the fear goes in at the beta waves of the brain, and and then that's when you're most easily brainwashed. That's when you can be controlled more than anything, and then we're creating for them. They don't even have to do anything, because we're the ones who put the masks on, cancel clear, who, I literally was just in Florida where there's no mandate, and I drive by and there's a guy on a bridge fishing all alone with no one around him with a mask on, and I'm just like, in a state where you're not even have to do that. So, but it's sad, and I'm no judgment at all. And also, this is a guy who is probably scared and thinks that I should do this. You know what I mean? He's just been told, and he believes, and there's so many versions of that, and it's scary that critical thinking. Where is it gone?
Well,
what's up?
Hypnosis is very effective. Very effective tool. I mean, look, Obama wrote to his presidency on hypnotic tone, the voice. He was a master hypnotist, I called him, when he first came into power. Hitler did the same, by the way, right? Hypnosis, very powerful tool. Repetition is one of the basic forms of hypnosis. Television itself is a hypnotic tool. When you put the television on for about 15 minutes, your brain a state that is basically hypnotized, right? Unless you are an active viewer. That's why I love movies, right? I love stories that engage you in a way that, how do you say, it forces a little bit more cognitive connection or emotional connection. I guess not just emotional, but cognitive connection, because the emotional level, I guess you could say, of soap operas and whatnot, yeah, it's it's just like hooks you in. And then I always said, they're there to sell soap for a reason, right? They were called soap operas. They're there
that's funny.
That next You're like, hold that. Okay, I'm in that emotional. I'm open. I'm excited. I'm fearful. I'm in love or joy, whatever it is. Buy joy. Buy Tide. Buy this. Okay, let me go buy. And if I don't buy it consciously, when I go to the store, I'll be like, Tide. I'm familiar with Tide. Yeah, I want to buy Tide. Mass hypnosis of the population. Corona is interesting. The coronavirus. Because you talk about different states, right? And like Florida, Texas, California, they all have comparable deaths. You just look at the deaths, like, what is it, about 20,000? And again, I don't believe any statistics with the coronavirus, because as the CDC acknowledged, most of the people that have died with coronavirus, not of coronavirus, had two to three other comorbidities, right? Factors in their health that were affected. And I have no doubt that the virus can be damaging for certain people, but the majority of the people, it isn't. 99.7% survival rate is indicative of that, for anyone under 70 years old. So you can't talk to me about this being this most dangerous disease in history. But what's interesting about coronavirus, it was around in America from at least November last year. People forget this. They don't really understand this. I know this for a fact, because I know someone in Australia who has the antibodies, who got very sick when he was here around November of last year. And I remember it was a bad flu season last winter. I got really sick. My girlfriend got really sick. A lot of people I know got really sick with look, I've had flus that have put me into pneumonia, right? This is so stupidity about, we're classifying everything as COVID, if a flu, pneumonia, heart disease, all these deaths are all being lumped into COVID now. But, I've had flu that put me in walking pneumonia because my body wasn't healthy back then. I became more conscious of health. So when I'm saying that I got really sick, it wasn't like I was going to die, but I was sick for a week. COVID was around back then. No one talks about that. We don't really know how many people were dying from that bad flu last year, or whether or not it was the same, or whether or not we got COVID, because there was no pandemic. So it's like, you see how psychology is so important to all this? If people were walking, like they say, like, if you really want to get rid of COVID, throw out the television. Because it's not like a cloth mask is going to protect you. Let's just get past this. The Denmark study showed that. It literally was 1.8% of people that with the mask, wearing it constantly, still got COVID. 2.1% without the mask got COVID. That's a difference of 0.3%. So you can't tell me that the cloth mask is really stopping anything. So can we just get past this idea of cloth masks and social distancing? Can we get into the idea of how do we keep ourselves healthy? What is health? Why don't we start with that? Can we start with our guts? Because that's where our immune system begins, our guts and also our mouth. So we're wearing a mask all day. You're actually hurting your immune system, right? Because you're turning your mouth into, you're basically depriving yourself of fresh oxygen, fresh air. You're regurgitating and recycling all those bacteria. So between your mouth and your gut, right? Your immune system is beginning. Your tonsils. That's why when kids are young, they're putting everything into their mouth and they're eating germs and bacteria and the dirt. And they're like taking it into their mouth and their tonsils, and their immune system is working on. They're developing what? They're developing their immune system. And then you get a novel virus that comes along, probably manufactured. No doubt this is a manufactured thing. This is not from a bat in a soup. This is a manufactured thing. Okay, it's novel, but you have to get used to it. So at first, I'm sure a lot of people died because they were elderly. They were compromised immune systems. It was a shock to a system, right? To get a new virus, right? Every year's a new flu. That's why some flu seasons are really bad and some are mild, because it's a new virus. So you're engaging differently. How is it that isolating, putting on masks is going to help the 99.7% survival rate of those that are under 70 to actually adapt to it? That's why I'm keep emphasizing, you want people to be exposed. We love the fact that people are asymptomatic. This is great. All these people that are walking around asymptomatic, oh, they're super spreaders. It's like, no, they're asymptomatic because it means that their body's doing what you're supposed to do, which is to adapt, to let your immune system build and defend itself. For everyone under 70, which is the majority of the planet, the majority of the working age people of this planet, we need to be exposed so that we can move on with our lives. So as we've done for millions of years of human evolution. That's the reason we have countless numbers of viruses within our being right now. In fact, even our DNA is constituted by viruses.
Yeah.
Because this is how we evolve. Not to separate, isolate, shut down, and wait for the virus to pass. This isn't the Bible where the plague is going to pass after you shut your doors for 40 days. Where is it going to go? It's in it. It's over. It's in us. It's part of our biome now. So we need to evolve. That's what we do. We are supposedly, Darwinian evolution that you guys, you scientists are so, predicated on this notion of Darwinian evolution. What happened to that? What happened to the notion of taking the virus and developing immunity before vaccines were invented? Oh my God, this miracle of vaccines. Really? How do people survive before vaccines? How do we get to peace exactly with millions of people? Don't pretend that there weren't millions of people in countries like France before vaccines. So I'm sorry, it wasn't vaccines that allowed the growth of population on this planet. We've been doing just fine. Sanitation has improved, plumbing, indoor plumbing. We're not throwing our poop out windows anymore, below. I mean, all these things have evolved, right? So yeah, we have done pretty well as far as without having to get vaccinated to survive with our immune systems. And guess what? Our immune systems work better by exposure. So people talk about the vaccine issue, and it's like, it's not that the dead virus is what scares me. First of all, they don't even have the dead virus apparently for this corona vaccine. It's an mRNA vaccine, which means that it's designed to what? As RNA does, RNA affects your DNA. RNA codes your DNA, right? So what are they doing? I don't know what they're doing with it. I don't want it in me. That's my right. It's my body. But even any vaccine, the problem is not the dead strand of the virus. It's all the heavy metals in it. And they go, well, you eat heavy metals. It's like, well, you eat it and you ingest it differently as you would if you bypass your blood-brain barrier when you inject it directly into your bloodstream. People can't use common sense anymore. They just literally are just whatever the media, the Dr. Fauci said, becomes their reality. And it's like, what happened to common sense? What happened to thinking critically? What happened to say, no, this is my body, my being, and I say no. And I say, this is what works for me, and my relationship to my health is my business. And I will choose which doctor I want to engage with, or I want to engage with a doctor. Why do I have to be imposed? What is this psychology that we're buying into that says Fauci is the one that's going to tell everyone what to do with themselves? I don't care if it's Fauci or any of these other doctors out there. What gives them the right? This is not Catholic Church times anymore. This is not the Pope is ordaining you all must go and worship on Sunday. No, this is not how human evolution is designed. Human evolution is designed to empower the individual, the level of body, mind, and soul.
Well, and the crazy thing is, when all this was coming out, I was posting videos just like this, and so were lots of doctors. And guess what? Censors completely taken off, strikes against everything removed. I mean, even like probably a lot of what we're saying or you're saying here on this isn't going to be acceptable, So they don't want you to have that information. They only want to tell you what they want to tell you, because then, and you're right, going back to the metals, if 5G is an issue, or, even with the testing, I've been looking into these tests. It's not looking good. I'm finding all of these websites where they're actually have been meeting for years about barcoding humans. They're putting us in a different category. You guys can look up Barcode Life Data System. You can look up eyeball.org and cball.org, and these World Economic Forums that have been meeting all over globally for this transhumanism situation, because organic people, like true humans, cannot be patented, number one, and also they can't be controlled, and they don't like that. So if they can pump up the food and dumb everybody down through the fluoride and the chemtrails and the whatever, the food and the V's, and but then at the same time everyone's in this like lull stoop of a slumber hypnotist situation, then it's like, oh sure, I'll just do whatever anyone says, and then we're all lulled into this transhumanism thing. And guess what? Once you got the nanotechnology in you or the AI stuff, it only takes a button. And I've looked at some of this stuff in the last few days, and they can put it. Look up philo code. Look up some of these situations but they can actually inject people with certain. I guess it would be kind of like a software type situation. I mean, they're tiny, 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 and they can be coded to a faith or a color or a location. So it could be like a whole city or a whole town or a whole state or a whole country, and they just can sit back and hit a button, and it'd be like, okay, all the men in this city, or all the, if they can do a mixed bag of how they want to attack or come against or hit the button on. And I mean, that is pretty that's it's kind of unsettling, to be honest. And like I said, I have talked to a few people. They're like, oh yeah, they're up first in line for the chip, because then they don't have to have a phone anymore, and they can just like talk in their head and call people and be on Facebook. And it's like, dude, are you for real right now? Because what's connected to that? Like, where is this going? Darth Vader, like you said.
Well, some of us theorize that. I used to do a show called Buzzsaw. We used to talk about gray aliens a little bit, and there was always a theory that the gray aliens, well, they say they come from Zeta Reticuli, but there's different theories as to like what their origin story was, right? Whether or not they had bought into the materialist paradigm, and that's why over time they essentially lost their ability to reproduce, basically, and they became pure robots at a certain point. They have oxygen tank, everything. Not oxygen, but essentially breathing apparatuses, right, to keep them alive. And they are unable to reproduce. So they basically cloned their copies. And some people say that they're, for example, slaves of the reptilian order. We're talking galactic history now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I want to say this is all far out. Well, this Israeli space, one of the heads of their space program in Israel for like 20 years came out recently and said the Galactic Federation is real, and that he looks at it as benevolent. I think the Galactic Federation is benevolent, but I don't know why he he doesn't talk about the darker forces amongst the alien presence on this planet. But anyway, the point is that the Greys, in terms of their story, and this is, these are people like, what is it? There's a good book called Song of the Greys, I think, that's really worth looking at. People like John Mack, who was a professor at Harvard, who died, but he was doing hypnosis on people. I should say hypnotic regression to get people to remember their abduction experiences, if I recall. But at least he was recording hundreds and hundreds of abduction experiences. He said there's just too many similarities, commonalities within these abduction experiences for me to discount them and say that they're a hallucination. The point is that the Greys, as a species, seem to have been what we are going towards as far as this. You talk about the chipping thing. It's like the vaccination. One of the concerns is sterilization, right? That essentially, we will be sterilized. This form of human that goes along with the plan, sterilized, chipped, mask will basically, as I said, after you get the vaccination, you still got to wear the mask. You're basically going to have the first generation of kids by about year 2, I would say, if they continue with this process. That'll basically be the first gray aliens, because they literally will not have normal access to oxygen on a daily basis, right? How's that going to affect their development, right? The growth of their bodies. Will they be shrunk? Will they be smaller? Will their brains be smaller because they won't have natural? Again, we know how much that restricts if you're wearing the mask, 5 to 8 hours a day. How much are you restricting your blood oxygen levels? So what are you doing to the kids, right? And then perhaps they're, in a way, preparing them to then say, well, put these, oxygen masks on or tanks on that you can basically walk around in society if you don't want to wear the mask, right? Because the danger is the air itself. You can't breathe the same air anymore. Wow. This is psychosis of what's going on here. So now you have this pre-gray human, right? That's going to be neutered, essentially. Obviously, we have the trans, I don't mind. People can be transgender, they can be gay, but like this whole thing about like, there's transgender advocates saying that kids should literally be injected with various steroids or suppressants for expression to know basically until they choose which sex they want to be. I mean, something to the effect where it's like you basically won't know if you're hormonally a man or a woman until you decide. This like it's already in common. It's already in thought. Is the point? It's already being expressed. So there will be some level of expression of this. I'm not saying that this will necessarily happen, but the point is someone is actually offering this as a viable solution for humanity, because I think their way this agenda sees us. As I said, this is 2 paths of humans. One is the natural human, organic human, and the other one is the GMO, the genetically modified human, genetically modified organism, right? And from birth, essentially, it will be modified. Even the Chinese did work experimenting, and they claim that they've been able to artificially create semen. And imagine you have an artificial womb and an artificial semen. What do you have at that point?
AI.
You have a purely artificial being. We already know the cloning technologies that have been there for 30 years, if not longer. Probably, I think longer. I think that everything that you see publicly has already been done a generation before, right? So you've got all these potentials to basically create a completely genetically modified being. And now you're talking about the super soldiers that's being discussed publicly, the Chinese super soldiers and others. Well, I mean, people like us on Buzzsaw and Conspiracy Theory were talking about super soldiers, a decade ago, and this was already old news for anyone that really understood the things that were going on since the Cold War era. So what is a super soldier going to be? A genetically created being in a lab? It'll be like different tiers, almost like a Brave New World. It'll be like the kids that are still coming out of wombs today with masks. I've seen pictures of babies with fucking masks on. It's like disgustingly horrifying vision, just beyond anything human. And so you'll have the babies growing up now with the masks, social distancing, the virtual reality culture. And then, the next step will then be complete synthetics, right? Synthetic beings that will appear human, and they'll ultimately just be what? They'll be what's put into their psyche, like a computer, essentially, indoctrinated, controlled. you can unleash that population against the human being. I guess you could have the next era of Clone Wars, as they call them in Star Wars. So again, this is stuff that we were talking about, myself and Daniel Estulin and David Icke. I mean, so many people have talked about this, decades, even before me, But the point is that we were crazy 10 years ago, looking pretty prophetic now.
Yeah, and going back to your comment about the grays, not just the sterilization, but even on a creative level, they don't have that ability. They are not able to do that. They have, and if you scalar wave, Sasha Stone has just used some help with some support, and they actually did scalar waves on all the different species off planet against humans. I say against in comparison to humans, and it's off the chart. I mean, especially the reptilian and the grays, they did not score so great compared, and humans were ish okay, not so, comparison to like the Pleiadians and what have you, but the missing portion and the great commodity of the DNA of a human that hasn't been augmented or put in any sort of transhuman situation is that creatability, and that's why the DNA is such a commodity. And let's face it, genetics. It's been a big experiment over here, and it's continuing on, and they're trying to shift the game here. And so where does that put us? I mean, we're going to be repeating history of what's already happened so many times if we're not careful and awake to it. But this is our time to be able to stand up and say, heck no. Well, the problem is I don't even know if people even believe that this has happened in the past or understand disclosure or, do you think that's where we're going? Because I mean, obviously Trump came out with, Space Force, and literally like, I think the day of or the next day, Netflix had, the Space Force Steve Carell version that was totally mocking and totally making it like, oh my God, Trump's so stupid, and making it just, but you and I and many people know that this is not, there's a reason why we need a Space Force, right?
Yeah. Well, we've had one, right? Secret space program.
Exactly. It's finally public, but yeah.
Yes. Disclosure. I mean, look, the black hats and the white. What can I say? I have optimism, I guess. That's really the root of it. I feel like there are certain soul contracts that are coming due. There's certain places in the galactic plane where we now are heading, where that form of manipulation and magic against the will and the consciousness of the population will no longer stand. That's why there's a checking out taking place.
Mm-hmm.
Closure is real. It's happening. There's the little like window dressing game of the media where it's like, look over here, look over there, let me sell you this product. And more and more people are either going to, they're separating, like those of us, even within our families, right? Within our friendships, it's like those of us that are like awakening and different places in the awakening process, but at least you're on that process of, okay, I'm awakening my consciousness. I'm no longer going to be an unconscious being that just follows whatever the authoritarian personality tells me to do. And then there are those that are just going to be like, well, we'll be the grist, as they say, right? For the mill, we'll be like the first round of experimental bots, robots, grays, serving that oligarchic agenda. So Great Reset versus Great Awakening. Maybe they can both happen simultaneously. I think ultimately Great Awakening is more powerful, and what is ultimately powerful in the eyes of creation will ultimately prevail. So I do believe, that's why I'm optimistic, that no matter what they do to crush the human spirit, as long as we are human, that spirit will prevail. And so who knows how long it'll take. I mean, even this election process, it's so far from over. It's so far from over as far as, the fraud is just being exposed day by day. And it's just putting the traitors and the deep state lackeys and, the oligarchs, to me, in a way, like, they know they can't keep this going. All they can do is more tricks, right? Like Pharaoh to Moses, right? It's like show him, show him he asks his sorcerer, show him, magic. Whereas, well, I can turn this staff into a snake, I have this power, this magic. Moses said, okay, your little tricks, guess what? Power of God is working through us. You see that sea over there? We're going to part the sea. We're leaving. That's what I'm saying. We're leaving, people. We're not staying in your New World Order agenda anymore. We're leaving the game.
Yes, I like it. I like it a lot. So, any last words before we part here? Like, what can you do what would you say to people just beginning, to people who are in the middle, and maybe in that wake up process? Like, what do you leave as far as encouragement, and also how can people find you? Like,
Totally.
because I'm sure that there's a lot of people who resonate with what you're saying and want to continue this.
Totally. I mean, you'll find me everywhere. Whatever your interests are. I'm sure I've done some show or something in that vein. Poetry. I've done, a couple of poetry books. The New World Order book. My film Fear of the Fist, which is a martial arts comedy, and kind of it actually shows the whole conspiracy that's happening right now, the escalation of men and the war that's coming, and the standing up of the fist is the Trump ultra masculine macho male figure. So I mean, that movie came out even before Trump was. I should say it was made even before Trump was a candidate. I've done paranormal stuff, but where to find me? SeanStone.info, on Instagram, The Real Sean Stone, Watching Sean, Twitter and Parler. MeWe, I'm on MeWe. I'm like, forget Facebook, get off Facebook, go to MeWe. Where else? I got my Sean Stone YouTube channel and BitChute channel, which is, I think BitChute's where it's going. We're going to get away from, divorce ourselves from these oligarchs. So, I mean, as far as my message to people, this is the moment. What does Christ talk about? Everything Christ talked about is coming here. Like, you got to read. The books have been doctored, but what was the original book called? It was called Q. The original book, people forget, where does Q come from? They think it's the secret clearance Q. They think it's a number 17. There are a lot of theories, the qubit computer. The first book of the Bible, in theory, was called Q. It's the basis by which the 4 Gospels are derived, right? So the Q is supposed to be the closest text to the actual teachings of Christ. No one knows what happened to it, who wrote it, where it is, okay? But it's the Q text, the Q scripture. That's what we're coming to. Go back to Christ's teachings. He always spoke to the be like little children, right? That's what I say to people. Be like little children. When you have that spirit of curiosity, that spirit of wonder, that is the spirit of magic. That's the spirit of God. And that's why the little children have been such a focus, right? For a lot of these few things, revelations about the massacre of children, the missing children. I don't care what the media says. Hundreds of thousands of kids go missing every year. And they're not just runaways. And they're not just, kidnapped. They're kidnapped, but they're kidnapped not just by, by some crazy crackpot down the road. It's systematic. Sex trafficking on this planet, you have more slaves today than ever in human history. Understand that. More slaves today. Who just got busted? Peter Nygaard, right? One of these oligarchs, almost worth $1 billion, with his brand. What was he doing? Trafficking girls. Not the same as Epstein. Epstein was more complex, but trafficking girls through, the Bahamas and basically, co-opting them into sex. He was protected. This was went on for decades. This is what happens. This is how the world is run. So pay attention. Saving the children begins the level of, are you connecting to the inner child within yourself? And are you recognizing the spirit and authenticity of the child? Or are you trying to crush it with your authoritarian personality? Because we all have it. There's an authoritarian living within all of us. The question is, do we stoke that? Do we make other people believe our doctrine, our dogma? Listen to me, obey me? Or do we stoke the child in ourselves that says, wait a minute, I really don't know. Let's open ourselves to exploration and questioning and expansion, right? Let's be curious.
Yeah, I think play is a key factor. And I talked about that when we were on the panel, is tapping into playing and creation and coloring and music and art and, doing things that make you happy and that, that can spark something else to get out of this like negativity and, tap back into that. And all of a sudden intuition is there and the answers are there. And you're like, oh, how did this happen? Well, because you kind of got out of that other time loop of trauma loop of programming and whatever crazy vibration that was. And we can actually exit all of that and kind of get back into ourselves.
Exit darkness, enter light. More joy, right? More joy. Ode to joy. What was played when the Berlin Wall came down? It was the Ode to Joy.
Yeah, that's true. Interesting.
That's where we're going. Right now, there's a great wall that exists, and it's not the Trump wall and BS people think.
Wow.
The wall is that which separates us from the overlords. That wall that exists between us and, you name it, the police, the doctors, the government, all these barriers that we think exist between me, the I am, the sovereign over my being, not to say sovereign over you or anyone else, but sovereign over me. Why can't I be respected for my sovereignty over myself? Why is the government and the elites and the Bill Gates and the Soroses and others trying so hard to eliminate my sense of sovereignty over myself? That's the question. Ponder that. If you don't believe in conspiracies, just ask yourself, why are they trying to eliminate my sense of sovereignty over self?
Yep, that's a biggie. There's got to be something going on here. I don't know. It could be what we've been saying all along. And you're way down this whole rabbit thing for years before I was, in different ways. But I'm just really appreciative that you're outspoken about it and that you're using your voice to trumpet some of this and actually stand up and cause others to be inspired and ignited to their own truth and to their own inspiration and their own courage. I mean, it really does take courage to stand and where we're at on this timeline. And literally the timelines are at stake right now. We're in this great opportunity. And I know you got to go, but you said reset versus reawakening. Just for some people who are in the comments here, can you expand just that one question of what do you see the differences? Like, explain that.
The Great Reset is being touted by Klaus Schwab. Schwab is educated in the tradition of Henry Kissinger, who was his mentor, Bilderberg. Both of them, Bilderberg steering committee guys. As I said before, Schwab is the founder of the World Economic Forum. Okay, this is the playground for the elite, and the oligarchs to come together and talk about how to control global economies, or at least, basically plan, major shifts in the global economy. Schwab's whole concept of the Great Reset is what? Well, by 2030, this connects to the UN Agenda 2030, I believe. But the idea of by 2030 and beyond, we will be in a world where you'll own nothing. You'll just be rentiers. You'll be renters in the land, right? And we'll have zero carbon emission, and we'll have, some of these things sound wonderful, romantic, right? Zero carbon emission. We'll be eating beyond burgers and Beyond Meats, be controlled. A lot of those companies are owned by Bill Gates. Not owned, I'm sorry, a stock. He has stock in those companies. But the point is that we'll be eating soy and other things that are basically to take us away from, you could call, what's the word? Paleo living, right? Carnivorous or omnivorous living. The idea is that they want us off the land. They want us in cities. They want us compacted in sort of, Blade Runner kind of scenarios, essentially, right? Virtual realities. So I'm actually about to read his new book, his Great COVID and the Great Reset book. So I haven't read it, so I can't explain all of it. But this is what I understand it to be. Essentially, the idea is we are at a moment where the economy is going to crash. It's like Trump has done a great job of actually boosting the U.S. economy over the last 4 years. But overall, you're talking about so much debt that's piled up. Artificial debt, by the way, going back to the nature of the central banking system itself, right? The Rothschild, Rockefeller era of banking, right? Going back to the 19th century, even going back to Babylon. But the creation of coin, and now it's become artificial. There's not even gold backing it in the U.S., for example. So it's really petrodollar oil, but with oil stock and everything slowing down, it's like I'm amazed that hasn't collapsed yet. But the point is that we're basically at a place where so much debt has been accrued. They want to reset the system, and there's two different paths of resetting it. There's the oligarch Great Reset, which is everyone ends up in basically receivership, the UBI concept, universal basic income. So whatever they give as far as a monthly stipend is essentially comes with a string attached to it. Mm-hmm. So it's shifting us away from the idea of ownership and sovereignty over our economy and our work and our services into more of an idea of receivership, a socialist system. And again, coming with the string attached of, okay, like look at China. Now they have credit scores based on your what's it called, your social score, like your social citizenship score, essentially like how you behave in society. So if you are what we're doing, criticizing, government officials, criticizing pandemic officials, criticizing vaccines, criticizing anything, right, in terms of power structure, well, we would be, our credit score would drop. We wouldn't receive as much, right? Or we'd come with, they would come and police us because they'd have the power. Whoever has the power to give you money also has the power to take it away. So if you give the government has the power to give you money, they can cut it off too. They can say, well, you violated this. The same as Facebook. Let's say Facebook and YouTube and Google, which is part of Google, right? These apparatuses, these technocratic apparatuses are conjoined with this way of monitoring us. So they're going to say, well, you're posting stuff on YouTube and Facebook that's being censored. So your credit score is going down. Your access to basic income is going down. See, people think this is all conspiracy theory. Look at China. China literally is doing this stuff. They have the totalitarian infrastructure, right? They really are the great example of what the New World Order agenda is about. It's like China, right? So they're going to have, complete censorship and monitoring of people. You can't even have YouTube in China, by the way. They're going to have monitoring of all people. And, they have surveillance cameras everywhere. If you're part of certain populations, you go to, you can literally be disappeared. They do organ trafficking and experimentation on prisoners in China. Let's say, like, if you're part of the minority, like Uyghurs or, like Muslims, for example. And we know the Falun Gong have been persecuted. The Tibetans have been persecuted. This stuff is this is how they operate. This is just business as usual. You understand? And I'm not anti-China. I'm just saying that, to me, there's a problem with the communist takeover of a country, because I'm a spiritual person. And when communism says you can't have God and you can't have spirituality, well, to me, that's satanic, because you're negating the actual essence and spirit of life. So what is the Great Awakening? The Great Awakening is saying, no, we are spiritual beings, we're multidimensional beings. If the system is coming down, it's has to come down in such a way that we become sovereign over our currency again.
Yes.
Whether it's gold backed or however you want to back it. Don't just give us this every time the Federal Reserve prints $1, we already owe $1.10 or whatever the interest is, right? We're already in debt. We're never going to be able to get out of debt in that system. What happened to the U.S. Treasury coining the currency? That was the way it's written in the Constitution. Where did this whole income tax come from? This was another violation of constitutional principles. We should not be taxed for our income. All these systems that have drained the American people of so much money over the course of our lifetimes, right? All this debt that's been accrued, has it really gone to improve our lives? Where's this money going? These $30 trillion of debt. Captain Austin Fitz says more. We know trillions have gone missing from Pentagon books and other places, but the question is, where is it improving our lives? Where do we see high-speed rails in America? Where do we see the I want to say flying cars, but where do we see
That is a good point. I mean, technology, where did it go? I mean, we've had these little tiny things and then nothing for how long? We've not had any really good technology.
You don't build a new place since the 50s. You don't build a new university. Where is this going? Where's our wealth going? And of course, people will sit there and go, yeah, well, it's going to this and that and welfare. Really? I don't think so. I know the government spends huge amounts and they waste huge amounts. We know that. But I'm saying, but the actual benefit of the person, the human, that's what the Great Awakening is about. It's about getting back to humanity at the level of our human, which is a God-given being on this planet. The human is a God-given being to this world. Human is a beautiful thing. What amazing thing we are. We're not like an animal. I mean, we have those instincts and animals are beautiful, but we're sitting here having a conversation, remembering, going forward and backward across time, writing, singing, doing poetry, doing art. What a beautiful thing humans are. We're taught to hate humans. we're taught to despise humans by these oligarchs that want us to see humans as bad, or or victimized by them. Just start singing the praises of humanity. Great awakening, recognizing that human God. That's the beginning.
That's awesome. Awesome, awesome. Well, I know you guys got to go, and you're a very busy man, and so your time has been very well spent here with a lot of the comments that are here. People are just super excited. I hope everyone who's watching will go find him, go to Instagram, BitChute, all the places that he is, and like continue to follow his work. It looks like several of them have said, I don't know if you could see the comments, but there's lots have been following you for quite a while. And share this, you guys. Share it, tag people, so people can get this while we can, because I really don't know if it will stay up, and to be honest. And I really do thank you for what you're doing and who you are, and your investment in all of us. It's huge. Not just with today, I mean, with your entire life. Like, this is your purpose has been to ignite and help others to their purpose and truth. And we need all the help we can get. And the more that we ignite and the more we can help people, I mean, my goodness, I think we got a shot here. I'm optimistic too. And you know what? One thing I didn't think they really thought about is, like you said, the human strength that we carry is, with the lockdowns and all the different things that they had over this last few months. I got to meet you, and I've got to meet all these other people that I didn't meet before, but we're all like finding each other, and we're working together, and we're encouraging one another. And I might have a bad day, or someone else might, but we're here, and we're staying the course, and we're holding the line, and we're just continuing. And I don't know if they anticipated that. I don't know if they really thought that would happen out of all this, but it really is happening. And
now people are waking up on math. It's like, wow, this doesn't make sense. 2 and 2, you're telling me 2 and 2 are 5, and it just, I can't make 2 and 2 make 5. It just doesn't make sense. So there's something going on here.
Yep. So, and I know you guys are all seeing that too. And so just keep shining, everybody. Keep shining, Sean. Keep doing your thing. And we all send so much love and appreciation to you, all your projects, everything you're doing. And I hope we stay in touch, and I know we will. And you guys just please do share and send love to all the things that he's doing. And just, we need all the support possible. We need to be praying for one another and lifting each other up, and finding those common grounds of unity within each other, and being the remarkable people that we are. So thank you so much.
Good.
Bless you. And we'll talk soon. All right. Bye-bye.